I may not have been the most emotionally warm individual.
By the way, guys, gram and a half of tren is not an Incognito cycle. Just to throw it out there to you. It's not an Incognito cycle.
You're not hiding that.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Drugs and Stuff with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally, and all of our programming, it's brought to you by you, the people of Patreon. Thank you guys for all your support. We've got some Patreon questions today. We are brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. You can get your lab work done by Dave if you're in the UK. Also get some phlebotomy, like bloodletting, everything else. So definitely reach out to him, get that done. We are brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition if you're in the UK. Great health supplements, great health stacks, performance supplements as well. And we're brought to you by supplementsource.ca for Canadians. Great deals that change week by week. And last but not least, of course, we have always been brought to you by truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK for high quality, third-party tested supplements. What's going on, Dave? What's our what are we calling our topic today?
Undercover cycles.
What does that mean?
Basically, what we're going to cover is cycles that you can put together that have that are easy to hide from other people. Be it that you're still living in your mum's basement.
Yeah.
And you don't want her to find out. Or, it's the amount of people that come for blood testing and will say to us, I'm not using anything. Because we ask them, are you on anything? What medications, what drugs, all that sort of stuff. And then we'll get a message once they leave saying, I'm on this, and there's a bloody long list, and it's like, but the wife doesn't know or the partner doesn't know, and so there's quite a lot of people. There's also people that because of what they do for a job, they cannot seem to suddenly blow up.
Yeah, so that's one aspect, right? There's different aspects of getting caught. There's like the like, oh my God, that guy grew, 30 pounds. He looks insane. There's that. There's side effects. If you're training and then all of a sudden you get covered in acne, like that would be, and you're angry all the time. Like you get side effects, and that's an aspect. And then there's the aspect of, as in Dave's language, he would say, your missus finds your pins, in the cupboard or something, right under your bed.
Yeah. So like I said, there's a few tells that can cause people problems. I'm to be honest, I would always make sure that somebody knows what you're doing, because if there is ever an issue, and I'm not talking about an issue from drugs, you could step out on the street and get hit by a Pepsi truck. Especially if Matt's driving and watching the podcast at the same time.
He's not paying attention. Oh,
no. Or his boss. But life happens, and there are going to be situations where the health services will need to know what you're doing. So it is always worthwhile having somebody at least that understands what drugs you're taking, where those drugs are.
Yeah.
And that sort of situation. And also from a point of view of just a feedback monitor. I've always had my wife. She's always been very good at saying, look, you're a miserable git, you're a twat, you're angry.
And that's just on a normal day. That's on a normal day, right?
That's all before 7 o'clock in the morning. That's just how she greets me in the morning.
And well deserved too.
Yeah,
so
long list of problems that I create. But it's I've always had that feedback. So she'd say, look, you're being a bit sharp or short or whatever, check yourself.
Yeah.
And so then I'd be like, right, okay, is this drug based? Is this diet based? Is this something particular? Why am I a grumpy git? Well, why am I more than a normal grumpy git? So that's always handy to have. But what people choose to do with their lives, I don't stand in judgment. And at the end of the day, people just haven't got to the point where they've been able to tell their partner. I could definitely understand it from a career job point of view. You wouldn't want to see obvious signs of usage if you're in a role that wouldn't look favorably on that. I mean,
sure.
some jobs it's actually written into the employment contracts.
Yeah, and then there's others where it's not. But like, hey, you're an elementary school teacher. The word gets out on that. That's just not going to look good. All right. So where do we start? Let's maybe I'm thinking maybe we come up with a few different cycles for different situations, because like I said, we're going to have that situation of like, you don't want somebody to find your pins. And that came up in the previous episode. Somebody was taking like the tests on decanoate capsules because he didn't want to, have injectables laying around. But some people are going to be okay with doing injectables. They just don't want to look like they get caught. So what angle do we start with here?
Well, let's look. I mean, one of the biggest or most problematic areas of clandestine cycles is that if you're doing a bulking cycle, everything you're doing is going to lean towards visually obvious progress.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when you look at anabolics and you look at the drugs you'd pick for traditional bulks, and I don't mean traditional in the sense of because it's already done. I mean in the sense that because they are efficient at that type of growth, you are looking at what I always term wet drugs. So you're looking at drugs that are going to aromatize. So your Dbols, your Test, your Decas, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The problem therein is obviously estrogen, water retention, face ballooning, blood pressure, all those sort of aspects. Now, you can be super, super efficient with your estrogen management, but that's going to require a lot of blood testing just to fine manage it. So they're a difficult drug to incorporate in a bulking cycle if you're trying to keep the fact that you're bulking undercover. The other thing is obviously calorie intake wouldn't be as high because that obvious balloon is going to reflect very quickly. So I think you would get away with a low dose of MPP.
Yeah, okay.
And then I'd be more, your test mast. Keeping it sort of at least 1-to-1, probably more in a favor of higher mast over the test. And then maybe just a low dose of MPP in the background. And I mean a low dose, sort of 75, maybe 100 max, sort of 2-3 times a week.
Yeah, that's a decent dose if you ask me. If you're doing 100 3 times a week, you're going to get some quick size from that, I think.
I think if you're sensible with the calories, you keep a decent high level of cardio in, that should be quite manageable from what you're going to look like visually. The other thing is when you inject, you want to be spreading that over as many sites as possible. You don't want to be doing large volume injections if you're trying to hide things because obvious lumps appear, soreness appears, and that can all indicate there's something. If you're limping every week on a Thursday,
yeah.
So I would look. I wouldn't say microdosing, but I would look to spread the shots out. So if I was doing, say for argument's sake, I'm doing 1.5 mil of test, I wouldn't put 1.5 mil in a single shot. I'd put 3/4 in 2 sites at the same time.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm thinking though, if we're talking low dose cycles, you might only be taking 1.5 mil test total, right?
Yeah. So I wasn't specifically saying it had to be low dose. It was more just trying to remove the telltale signs. I mean, obviously, the lower the dose, the less impacting it's going to be all across the board. So that does make things easier.
Let me throw something out there. Dave. So I think like you said, the high water retention compounds, like the opposite of the clandestine cycle would be like test Dbol, right? 4 weeks in, your face is round as a balloon and you're up 20 pounds. And you also put a plate on, each side of the bar for every exercise. That's going to be pretty clear to a lot of people who know, even people who don't know. But something that's going to be more like a DHT-based compound, and like you said, maybe a little bit of something like NPP, I think you're going to be able to get away with that. You hit on a note with that water retention, though. Before I knew about like good, clean dieting, I held a lot more water. My food wasn't as clean. Steroids are going to make you more mineral retentive, right? Mm-hmm. So with that, you're going to hold more water. So I think keeping the diet real clean, that's a big part of it. Keeping your hydration, keep that water flowing through to kind of push all that sodium out. I think that's going to be helpful. But I would almost lean toward So, we always go with like test as a base generally, right? Like that's the way we often think. And then man, I wonder about like some Anavar, maybe 8-week cycle with some Anavar, or some Masteron or Primo, those types of compounds. I think those things, like, and I'm talking like, let's say somebody doesn't run anything at all. If they went from like completely natural and then they went to 300 test, 300 Primo, say, or 300 test and we'll say 40 Anavar, dude, they are still going to get big. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to put on loose clothes to hide the effects you get. Because at the end of the day, like, why are we cycling if we aren't going to grow? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. It's not the lack of tissue at the end of the day. It's the lack of that excess weight that you wouldn't be bothered about if you were just in an all-out bulk. But in this scenario, we don't want that excess because we need to keep things tight. I would also say that a decent level of cardio is going to really help with a lot of this as well. From a point of view of other cycles, sort of recomping or dieting, obviously your test, low test, mass, Primo are all excellent compounds. Primo, it's great. It doesn't have much in the way of sides. It's not really going to cause any significant changes overnight. The only downside of that is it's also not the most effective thing for putting all, muscle mass on in a bulk scenario, but it's very good at muscle preserving, very good if you're recomping or you're just trying to tighten up and gain a little bit of, tissue. Then it comes into really good situation. I mean, probably the ultimate sort of secret cycle would be oral only. And I know a lot of people shit on oral only, and fine, whatever. But obviously, that's a tablet, can go in any tub. It can be sat on the side as a tub of vitamin C. Yeah. You could take it in front of people. They wouldn't question what you were doing. So that would be but again, I would be looking more towards DHTs, but then you are also looking at limited exposure. So 6 to 8 week cycles is probably going to be your max. But still can be productive. At the end of the day, the better your training and diet, the less anabolics you're going to need to make progress. And that's unavoidable in any situation. So
true. Not only that, and then like I said too, the better your training, the better your diet is, the less water you're going to hold, Yeah,
the less size you're going to hold. And I think
bad size.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the key elements to not having obvious sides and not having obvious problems is, obviously, you've got your drug management, put that to one side, but the other secondary effects is cardio and diet. Get them two right, and you'll be shocked how well you can manage the non-desired impacts of anabolic use.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing about when you're trying to use anabolics and you want to progress, but you're not wanting that to be obvious. Those two factors really come into play in a big way. If your diet is super on point and your cardio level's there, then you're going to manage sides much, much better. And then the only thing you've got to look at then is the negatives, like high estrogen, really high prolactin. It's not going to cause much in the visual. It's more going to cause issues sort of like erectile wise or potentially mood wise. But it's not high prolactin is unlikely to put fucking 30 pounds of water on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like estrogen would.
What about this side effect when you suddenly are like extremely attracted to your girlfriend or wife or other girlfriend, and you just nonstop are going after it? Because that could be a giveaway too, right? If all of a sudden you're like, every Thursday to like 5 times a day, that they might wonder. They might wonder what's going on.
That's really easy to solve though. Just print off a picture of Scott, and every time you get horny, look at it. Yeah, that's it. Job solved. No, I mean, come
please
on.
Don't look at pictures of me, please, guys. Whatever you do.
Especially not when you're excited. I'm very happy to see Scott today.
Oh God.
No, I mean, look. I get a lot of... I'll go slightly off topic, but I'll come back and you'll understand why. I get a lot of messages and questions around, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that, I'm experiencing what do I do about it? And in a lot of cases, it's you're using anabolics. This is what happens. just suck up a deal with it, princess. Now,
Yeah.
self-control is part of that process. You know, I mean, as I said earlier on, my wife was always my benchmark. Now, I could get grumpy, and yeah, at high doses, they were definitely when I was pushing in 1.5 grams a tren. I may not have been the most emotionally warm individual.
By the way, guys, 1.5 grams a tren is not an incognito cycle. Just to throw it out there to you, it's not an incognito cycle.
You're not hiding that. But I may have been, shall we say, slightly emotionally barren at that sort of level of intake. But the thing is, I was aware of it, so I managed it mentally in the sense of, I compensated for that. I made sure I paid attention. I made sure I was compassionate and I was concerned and I was sympathetic to the people around me because I knew I wouldn't naturally be like that. And it's the same with sort of aggression. Yeah, sometimes you can't, but if you're aware it's there, you can take a step back and go, you know what? Because you're not kicking off when you're at work. So why are you kicking off when you get home? It's because the environment changes and you think you can get away with it. Yeah. So there's an element here of self-control. And I get it. Exhaust pipes on cars start looking exciting. But you've just got to control that. And if it gets really bad, bathroom, 5-finger shuffle, just get it done.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, it's a common complaint that partners do have about the fact that they become so sexually active that it actually becomes a pain in the arse. Not literally. I wasn't going there before anyone says that.
But it could. It could, technically. Yeah. Man. So, okay. So I think we kind of covered things here. We did talk about orals only on the last episode. I guess any oral only cycle, well, not any, because something like Dbol or Anadrol, unless you kept it really low dose. I will tell you a story, Dave. I remember my second cycle. There was this guy that I knew since I was natural. He was a personal trainer and he was independent. So he didn't work for a gym. He would go to a gym and train people there. And he trained people at 2 or 3 different gyms. I think anyway, I would see him at both of the gyms that I went to. Like I was going to one for a while, then I switched to another and I saw him there. And I hadn't seen him for a little while. And then I saw him again and I was in the middle of my second cycle and he's working with a client. And I remember, man, I was like freaking full of water and like super just maxed out, right? Like walking around in the gym, just like so pumped that I could hardly lift my arms. And I remember coming over to the dumbbells and I go to pick some dumbbells up and I'm like, hey, what's up, man? He's standing there with his client. He looks at me and he goes, holy shit, whose medicine cabinet did you get into?
Yeah. No, it's...
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
There comes a point with development where you're not hiding things anymore. Just because you're the size you are, and even if you weren't using, people would assume you would be, particularly if you're in condition. It's not always size that's the giveaway, but condition. When you start getting vascular, people will start linking that to drugs.
Oh, good point.
I've been big and strong, and people just thought I played rugby, which is fine. It wasn't my bother. As soon as you start getting any form of condition and you start seeing veins coming through, then the drugs start popping up quite regularly. So, it's... The thing is, the slow burn is always going to be the one that people don't see. But it's the rapid changes that will always start people asking questions.
Yeah.
But then people are thick as well. I mean, I remember dealing with a police job. So a police officer had been accused of using steroids.
Okay.
They tested him and they found he'd been using SARMs.
Okay. Now, was that legal or illegal at the time in the UK?
So they were legal, and the problem is that it's the employment law around his contract actually stated SARMs in his employment contract.
Okay.
But said that you would not misuse them. So it became a real contentious point around what was the discipline, what's the definition of misuse. He was taking them as directed. The dosing came back that, in his blood levels that was correct. But the reason the investigation was triggered was an intel. And the intel was from a fellow officer that stated he had skinny legs and big arms, so he must be using steroids.
What?
So, you can't excuse people's strange ideas about what quantifies drug use.
True. Were you a consultant on that case?
Yeah. I had to analyze and pull apart the employment contract from a drug perspective.
Okay. Well, listen, we've got a bunch of listener questions, and we'll try to get through everything we can, guys. By the way, if you're new to our content, we'd love to have you subscribe and hit the bell. The bell will let you know when we have new shows come out, and that's literally several times a week. We have a bunch of podcasts, reaction videos, all that stuff. And for those of you who are already subscribed, we'd love to have you take part in the next episode. So we answer your questions here on the podcast. So comment on the latest episode, and we'll do our best to tackle your questions on the next one. So we talked last week about the Olympics. And since then, by the way, Dave, there have been multiple positive tests. I've seen, I believe, 5 of them now from the 2024 Olympics. Most of them were steroid related, and one of them was for using Lasix, I noticed. But we had a question regarding testing in the Olympics and just in general. Question for Dave. The International Testing Agency, ITA, added a new endocrine molecule to the drug test for Paris Olympic athletes, enabling longitudinal, thank you. There we go. Longitudinal profiling of HGH biomarkers over 24 hours. He asks, how is this done? Do you know anything about this?
A little bit. So it's based around what they call a biological passport. So basically, traditionally, what would happen is somebody would be tested for HGH. There would be no baseline levels. There would be so the levels were set around a predetermined range.
Yeah.
You should fall in between this and this. If you're out of this, then obviously you're using was the basic format. So what they've done now is they're doing long-term testing so that they create a baseline of what is normal for that individual. And then they monitor this with regular testing. And then the system is actually sort of semi-AI powered. So it's a little bit self-learning, and it uses statistical models based on their previous work. But it also looks for using algorithms to look for patterns or changes in patterns. So the 2 parameters they test for is IGF-1 and, get this right, procollagen type 3 N peptide or N-terminal peptide. And basically what it is, collagen turnover releases this peptide. GH increases collagen turnover, so more of this peptide is flowing around. So it gives you an indication that GH levels have been elevated for a period of time. As a result, this peptide has increased. And that's basically it. It's like a long-term monitoring program. So the idea is that, obviously, firstly, it will catch more people using because it's more sensitive to fluctuation. But they also argue that it should actually reduce the false positives because it's based on your baselines. So if you naturally have higher GH or higher IGF-1 or higher P3NP or whatever it is, then this will be taken into account. So you're not falling foul of a preset range. You're monitored against what is normal for you. Now, obviously, if someone uses GH year round, but most people aren't going to do, they're going to be on and off their GH cycles, and the testing is schedules periodically. So it would start to pick up the fluctuations that you were seeing.
I'd be on it year round, personally. But yeah, I see what you're saying, though.
Yes.
Right.
That's basically what that new testing is.
All right, we got a bunch of other stuff here. Another question relating to the Olympics, dude. It's crazy how many different sports they have now, and what is considered sports. What's a good steroid cycle for breakdancing? The awesome chick The Aussie chick at the Olympics doing breakdancing was hopeless. She needs a steroid cycle that would give her talent, coordination, skill, strength, rhythm, and timing. Believe it or not, she is a doctor of breakdancing. That's not BS.
No, so she studied breakdancing culture. She's written a few papers on it, and she actually has a PhD in something that sort of associates with that. One, that I find that a very strange PhD, and the fact that that even exists and you can get funded for doing that, I find very odd. She was effing useless. There's no two ways about it. She wasn't a breakdancer. She could be into the culture as much as she wants. Respect for her academic achievements. I can't help feel... The thing is, I believe she's actually said that she didn't really practice.
What? You didn't practice? You didn't practice for the Olympics? What?
I believe so, which starts then. So she's become an internet sensation. Yeah, she's got a lot of criticism, but no doubt she'll make a lot of money off the back of this.
Yeah.
The two things that confuse me, if she genuinely hasn't practiced, and she said she knew she didn't have the skill, so she improvised trying to do alternative stuff, which was just stupid, then one, she had no right being there, but that's not really her fault. That's the fault of whatever idiot watched her and said, yes, you've qualified for the Olympic team and we're going to pay to take you to Paris.
That's a good point. Maybe she showed them something different. Maybe she showed them something different, you know?
Well, I've seen video of her dancing in other occasions and she was equally bad then.
Oh, okay.
Little bit more traditional moves, but they were still terrible.
Huh.
So... I mean, it's not a personal opinion that she was crap. The judges marked her with 0.
Wow.
So she was definitely crap. You know
Holy crap. No kidding.
But I don't buy this, she tried well, she was brave. No, she wasn't brave. No, she didn't try well at all. She should never have been there. Breakdancing as a discipline, extremely physically demanding.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know, they are athletes in various aspects.
I used to know a guy at one of my gyms that breakdanced, and he would literally train so that he would be stronger for breakdancing.
Yeah, I mean the power to body weight ratio of those guys and girls is incredible.
Yeah.
Whether it should be in the Olympics, I don't know. That's another conversation. But the fact that someone was able to compete at such a low standard, and got an all expenses paid trip to the Olympics to do so and represent their company, I find an insult to the other athletes personally.
All right.
I don't buy this good natured bollocks. It's just a pile of shit.
All right,
anyway.
We've got about 20 questions, so we are limited on time. We're limited on time. I'll hit this one really quick. Hey Scott, I'd be interested to see your blood work after the health subs that you've mentioned, and your comments on what affects and how. I don't miss an episode. Really hope that you do a video or even a segment on this. He also says, love you guys. Cheers from Yorkshire, God's country. So he's not too far from you. So here's the deal, Dave. I just got my labs. I knew that my hematocrit was high, and that's due to my lungs not working as good as they used to after I'd gotten sick, right? So it's always been high. It's really right now the highest it's ever been. It's 58. So I need to do some bloodletting. I need to get that down because I don't feel as good, and my blood pressure will go up with that. So I wanted to see where it was at. What's that?
What's your hemo?
I can't remember offhand, but it's also elevated. Everything in that range is elevated. And then the other thing that I wanted to look at was my liver markers and cholesterol. Those things have been pretty good in the past couple of years. They weren't so good this time around. ALT and AST were mildly elevated, and my HDL was down. It was up in the 40s, and now it's like 37 or 35. Here's the deal. So if you've heard me talking about it the last couple months, I'd been on and off using a little bit of injectable Dbol, and there's no question in my mind that's exactly what happened. The elevation in my liver, it may have been from training because I didn't take any training off That's super possible, and it's not as if it was crazy high. It was in double digits for ALT and AST. But my cholesterol, that I was happy that I had finally gotten it up to like in the 40s, and now after using the Dbol, of course, for a couple of months, now I'm back down into the mid 30s. So there's that.
With ALT, I wouldn't really be batting an eyelid of anything under 100. Yeah. It's I wouldn't even give it a second thought.
Dave Stanley never bought me a free pizza.
That's because I don't like you.
Hey, what's up, guys? I have a lot of people who reach out to me on a regular basis who are trying to more effectively reach their goals. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that they're not getting enough protein. And there's only so much chicken breast we can eat through the day, but we can easily add a high-quality protein supplement to boost those numbers up. True Nutrition has just about every protein powder you can think of, from high-quality whey isolate. If you don't tolerate lactose, then you could use their beef isolate, or you could use their pea protein isolate if you don't eat animal products. They literally have everything you'd think of. I've believed in them for like a decade before they advertised with us. And they never went out of their way to say like, hey, we want to promote our stuff through you. I literally asked them because it's a company that I believe in. And at the end of the day, I want to see you guys reach your goals as effectively as possible. So if you use our code THINK at True Nutrition, you'll get some savings, you'll help to support our programming, and you'll get some high quality products to more effectively reach your goals faster. How long can you take Arimidex for, and can it be dangerous? I take 1 milligram every 3 days while on cycle. Usually I do 16 weeks of test at 650, 700 per week, test only cycles that is, and then he goes down to TRT. I feel I never stop taking Arimidex apart from when on TRT. Thanks for the education.
Long-term ADEX, it's more where it's putting your estrogen values rather than the drug itself would be my argument. It is going to be negative on HDL. It's one of the reasons I like Aromacin, because it doesn't have that negative impact on HDL. But at the end of the day, if you're managing your HDL and you compensate for that with supportive supplementation, then that doesn't need to be a major concern. It's been used long-term in several studies around cancer use and stuff like that. Cancer treatment, should I say. And it's never shown up to be particularly problematic. I would say that the main issues are, one, lipid adulteration. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word then. And two, that your estrogen is reduced into a healthy position rather than a low position, which a lot of people tend to focus on. You don't want to be, based on a UK measure, 159 PMOL, you do not want to be putting estrogen sort of sub 70. That's getting too low. That's going to start having negative impacts across the board. Estrogen is an important hormone. It's also very important for the production and growth of muscle tissue, which I was talking to your good lady about the other day.
That's right.
But
and she said thank you. She said thank you, by the way. She wanted me to tell you that.
I would tend to keep estrogen above half to top third of range if it's not creating side effects and symptoms.
Go with that. Big time supporter of the show here. Question for the next one. What are your thoughts on low dose beta blocker before stepping on stage to keep nerves under control? I haven't competed in 13 years and I'm a bit nervous. I wrote him back, Dave, on the replies on the comments. And listen, my thought was, why don't you test it out? Test it out ahead of time and see, can you still get a pump? Because I found that for me, with a low dose beta blocker like metoprolol, 25 milligrams, I can still get my heart rate up. It's not as easy to, I can still get a pump, but there are days that it isn't quite as easy to. So I would say experiment ahead of time. He's got to practice his posing, right? And so can you get a pump, before the show, like weeks before the show? And if so, you probably would be more likely to get one. Can you explain why people use beta blockers in a situation like this or under stressful events?
Well, yeah. So, the common one over is bisoprolol. But basically what it does, it basically puts a cap on your heart rate, or the ability for your heart to increase its rate. So whereas, you might find in a hard workout, your heart rate's clipping 160, 180, you add in a beta blocker and it may not be able to get above 140.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how hard you train. Now, when you're on impacting doses, you can literally feel that restriction.
Oh yeah.
You can feel that pullback of your heart rate. It's quite a weird sensation to experience. You feel mentally like there's more there, but physically it's just not coming out.
Yeah.
But from a point, and beta blockers are prescribed for anxiety and stuff like that, so panic attacks and all that sort of thing. So the theory of it seems sound, and I would suspect that it would probably actually potentially be slightly beneficial as well. If your heart's not stressing and it's not racing, there's probably less chance of problems like water retention from that as well.
Contrary though, yeah, if you can't get your heart rate up, maybe you can't get the blood to flow and pump, right?
Well, this is where it's going to be a little bit difficult. Doing a pre-run in a non-stressful environment, your heart rate baseline is going to be lower.
Sure.
So it's only when you get the stimulus of stress that your heart rate is going to elevate, and that's where the Bisop or whatever you choose, the beta blocker, would then clip it down a little bit and stop that becoming a problematic level. But I suspect that if you're good with low doses, i.e., you are only using a really low dose because you're only looking to take the edge off. You're not looking to flatline yourself so you're chilled out like fuck.
Right.
You just want to take the edge off the high stuff so you're not proper jitters. Then obviously that would help. The other thing as well is obviously what are you doing yourself that can add to the problem? Like, what's your caffeine intake like? Are you taking a stimulated pre-workout to try and help with the pump? What are those sort of things that you are doing that may contribute to you getting hyped up before going on stage because you're nervous on top of all that stuff as well? So there are environmental factors that you can control as well on top of it. But yeah, I see a marginal minimal dose, just taking the edge off should be enough. I mean, you can always get stoned as well. There's always that option.
You know what my suggestion is? My suggestion is that you do all your homework ahead of time. And this is honestly what drove me to be my best in competition. You try to get your absolute, like, ungodliest, leanest body fat possible so that when you do show up, you know that you literally did everything you freaking could do. You know what I'm saying? And when you know that and you feel that, honestly, you do go in a lot more calm. You know, if you know, like, hey, I put all the cards out on the table for this. When I step on stage, I know there wasn't any more I could do. So yeah, who knows who else is going to show up, but I know that this is the best that I could be right now. There's a sense of like acceptance when you feel that way. There really is.
Yeah, I mean, there's other things as well. Like you could do some meditation leading up to the show. Do some breathing exercises. So there's other factors you can use to help control your heart rate as well. Yeah. It doesn't have to all be chemically driven. You can look at some self-regulation as well.
Good point. And I do suggest guys do box breathing when they. And if you start practicing it ahead of time, then you're already in the habit, so you can use it when you need it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Oh, I'll go to George, UK. He had one in the live stream. He says, hey, guys, quick T3 question for a regular person. 25, I think he says 25 milligrams per day, but I believe he needs micrograms per day, or 37.5 micrograms split. I would say 25, but split.
Yeah, two things. Empty stomach, no caffeine, if you want to maximize the absorption. A lot of the issues around T3 is that you're not getting its full impact because you've eaten too close to it or you've got caffeine, which will affect its absorption.
Yeah.
To be fair, I'd start at 25. 25 should pretty much put you top end of natural range. It's more of a replacement dose.
Like high replacement, right? Like you're cranking,
But and then 37.5 should push you out.
Yeah.
But like I say, a lot of it is down to absorption, and that can play an impact. But yeah, I mean, I would expect someone on 25 either to be sort of just under top end of range or just sort of clipping top end of range, and then 37 just pushing them out of range. But I agree with Scott on that one.
All right, question for the next show. Have you guys overheated taking Clen on leg days? And if so, how do you combat it? Just take the Clen out that day. Diet and time of training has remained the same, but I am getting lightheaded and unable to perform compound movements at 100%.
I'd just remove it for that day, personally, but you're talking about something to do with dieting. I've got no experience around that.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what's causing it, like what's going on with his blood pressure at the time. I know that I've seen it happen where Clen can lower blood pressure, especially at higher doses. If you had real low blood pressure and you can get kind of queasy, dude. Because I told you the time I made a massive mistake with Clen was I accidentally doubled my dose and I was taking like a super high dose and it made me feel like so weak. But I guess it's only happening when he exerts himself on leg day. So I don't know. But yeah, man, I'd say maybe take it out that day or take it after leg training.
Also, is this a bit of a combination situation where because leg day is such a heavy compound day that the actual diet is having an impact as well?
Yeah. And what's his hydration like? Because Clen is going to push water out, right? You're going to have poor hydration while you're on it. I would suggest, if he doesn't want to remove the Clen, I would suggest trying to make sure you really increase your water on leg day and maybe even take an electrolyte with that. Take an electrolyte that day especially and see if that makes any difference. And if it does, then you could probably benefit from electrolyte every day anyway, especially on Clen. And some taurine, it helps. Clen pushes taurine out of the muscle cell, so you get some taurine back in there too. Electrolytes, taurine, more water. Great show, gentlemen. Quick question about Clen. Do you titrate it down when coming off, or do you stop cold turkey?
I don't see a need to taper, to be honest, but I know some people prefer to do it more for other reasons, as in they want to ease back out of the diet rather than just stop and get this sudden change in levels. But there isn't really anything from the drug itself that requires you to taper.
Yeah.
But obviously you can get a little bit of a rebound. So from a point of view of where your calories are to where your expenditure now is, lesser Clen.
Yeah.
So for that reason, some people will back out of it a bit slower. But I would say that with stuff like T3, T4, that I would tend to taper.
Yeah, that's more important for sure.
You can cold turkey it, but you will go through a stage where your thyroid just isn't responding as it starts to sort itself out. Where if you taper it, you can ease it through that process, and it's a much less seamless, and less impacting. Yeah. But with Clen, I don't really see the issue, to be honest.
One of the old school coaches, the really experienced guy that I learned from, had tapered it out for his contest prep clients. And so I've always done it just for the reason that because there can be that slight water rebound, especially like if we're coming off a contest prep, any type of water manipulation we do, there's going to be some type of a water rebound. And if we are going to compound that in any way by also coming off the Clen, then maybe there's like a multitude of factors that kind of combine to create, more water retention. I would rather minimize it, so I don't do like a big taper down. I'll just do like half of what we were taking for 2 days and then half of that for 2 days and then come off.
Yeah. The water thing actually was something I didn't consider, and that's a very valid point.
All right. What about, speaking of water, what about HGH? Somebody asked us, and listen, there's no stupid questions. He said, does growth hormone make you hold water?
Yes.
Yes. And have you noticed, Dave, have you noticed that different growth hormones, especially like generics, I've seen some people say like generics make me hold more water. Then I've seen guys that I've worked with where pharma made them hold more water. Pharma from the pharmacy made them hold like substantially more water, different brands, different effect.
Yep. Also, number of amino acids can have an impact as well, because obviously there's 2 different amino counts for growth.
Isn't there mostly like the 191 though?
More commonly than not, yes. But that can have an impact. Pharma can have an impact from the point of view you're just getting a much more potent dose than previously.
Yeah.
Generics can as well. And also, I mean, factors like diet play into this. What other things are you playing with? So there's a whole host of things that can influence, even temperatures, that can push you over the edge. I mean, so quite simply, you could be on growth, a low level of water retention, nothing that's particularly significant. You just feel full.
Yeah.
You feel full, you feel round, you look good. Yeah, there's a slight smoothing, but nothing major. Then the temperature goes up 15 degrees, and all of a sudden you're a watery mess.
Yeah.
Because that combined with the heat has now created a scenario that your body can't cope with. So there's all sorts of little things that can add in and just tip that scale over the edge for it to become a problem.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear the thoughts of you two gents regarding the use of veterinary L-Carnitine.
I'm not aware of there being any bloody difference.
Yeah, I mean, just like veterinary gear, right? Like it's out there. It doesn't have the same standards as made for humans, right? But
sometimes it's better.
Well, yeah, you think it's maybe better than pharmacy, made for humans. But yeah, like if you compare it to UGL, I would imagine they have higher standards than the guy who's making it in his basement or something.
Yeah, I mean, L-Carnitine's L-Carnitine. I don't believe there's any difference between the two compounds. I don't think there's a different version at all. I think it's pretty standard stuff. I mean, we talk about EQ, Bullnose, Equipoise. That was a veterinary drug.
Yeah.
Hence the name EQ. That's where it came from, Equa, because it was for bloody horses.
I thought it had to do with balance or something. But
no,
I've heard
that
too. Okay. Yeah.
But, I mean, Equipoise has been used in horse racing for a very long time. It's banned now, but it was used in horse racing for a very long time. And there's a lot of drugs that are interchangeable between humans and animals. I mean, prednisolone, anti-inflammatory steroid used in humans, is used in animals as well.
Oh, yeah.
Aspirin is used in animals.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of crossover. But I don't think there's anything specifically different between veterinary grade and human grade, particularly when you're looking at peptide suppliers or Chinese suppliers of L-Carnitine.
No, this is our podcast, Dave. You realize it's kind of depends on you say it. Do you say the word niche or niche? You probably say niche because that sounds classier. Yeah. Niche. Here in Michigan and Detroit, we say niche, and Victoria, she says niche. I feel like niche is classier. Anyway, we have a very niche podcast, but imagine if we took it a step further and we did like PEDs for horses, and that's all we talked about. I mean, there'd be people who would listen. It might not be as many, but
No, but they might have more money.
Yeah, yeah, than bodybuilders. Let's see if we had anything else that we had pulled up here. There was the breakdancing question. Question from my client, Casey. He says, do you prefer posing at the gym before or after you work out? I would say after, generally. But, there's nothing wrong with doing both, too, especially when you get close to the show. See what you look like before you do your workout. And this was going to age me, Dave. Of course, I'm 57, so there is that. But when I was first learning how to pose, I had a literal VHS camera with a tape in it. And I would put it on a tripod and I'd hit record, and then I'd go up and I'd hit all my poses, and then I'd come back and I'd hit rewind, hit stop, hit rewind, hit play, and I would watch them back, and I'd be like, oh, I need to raise this arm up a little, that kind of thing. And then I would hit stop and rewind and record and go do it again. But I would practice at home. I practiced every day. Sometimes I would practice at the gym, but I think no matter what, as long as you get it in, that's all that matters. And you don't need a lot. And plus, Casey, he's in men's physique, so you literally only have 2 poses. If he practices 10 minutes a day, I think that's good,
I can't believe you were rich enough to be able to afford a VHS video camera.
It wasn't mine. I borrowed it from my parents.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, what are you trying to reflect? You want to just feel good about yourself, do it post-workout because obviously you're going to look your best. You got your pump. You're going to look massive.
Yeah.
If you want a very raw, unadulterated look at your physique, do it with no pump, proper daylight. That's going to give you the no shadow, no strings attached. This is what you really look like. So it all depends what you're trying to get out of looking at yourself at that point. I mean, it's great for a double bicep in the gym when your arms are pumped to beyond belief and you can't touch your own shoulders.
There was a time that you could literally strip down and pose in any gym. I mean, we've talked about this. You can't do that anymore. People get mad at you.
I nearly got thrown out of a gym. I used to always train commando.
Yeah, I'd kick you out real quick, Dave. Are you telling me you had your balls out in the gym?
No, I put my hand over my balls, but my ass was out.
No. I'm kicking you out of my gym instantly. Like, permanent ban. No.
And I dropped my pants just to see. You want to look at the pump, don't you? You want to see what the legs are looking like. So I dropped my pants, had a quick look, then pulled them back up. But yeah, see, I was bare-assed in the gym, and I got in trouble for that.
Yeah, as you should. It's called public indecency. You at least keep your boxers on, man. That's incredible.
I wasn't wearing any.
Yeah, well, it's time you start if you're going to be pulling your pants down in the gym. This is literally against the law. Literally. I mean, it is here. At least I'm sure it is there, too. The British, they're decent people, Dave.
I used to always wear baggies, always commando, and I remember squatting and my baggies tearing. So every time I squatted down, my balls just out below me.
I think we might have had something else in the live stream here.
I was finishing my set, though, at the end of the day.
You're like, okay, just give me a minute. Oh, wow. What about this one? This is back to our original topic. What would be a good cycle for a lawyer to handle cortisol but not overdo it and become too aggressive? That's an interesting question. We've never gotten that one before.
That's very much going to be dose. Obviously, you want to stay away from things like Mentren.
Oh, yeah.
So I've definitely been sort of down the line of Test Mass, Test Primo, those sort of compounds. You could look at something like Lion's Mane as a supplement to run on the side to help with the cortisol management side of things.
Yeah. All right. Hey, so we did have a couple more, but we're kind of out of time. Let's see here. Okay, yeah. So we'll cut it there. But before we went, though, I had to ask you, Dave, what is your advice, Uncle Dave's wisdom of the day? People are really loving this segment still.
Are they?
They really are, man. People, that's like all our comments, or at least like, I'll tell you, there's always at least a handful of comments of people saying, oh yeah, I could really relate to Uncle Dave's wisdom, or I really appreciated that. You're going to have to start putting work into this instead of just making it up while I film.
You know what? I actually completely, I normally think of something during the week and then I forget it. In this scenario, I haven't even thought of anything because I completely forgot we were doing it and the podcast was today and everything else.
Oh, you're kidding me. You must be really busy, right? Oh, you said you're not as busy, so you have no excuse, Dave. You have no excuse.
I've got no excuse. I've got no excuse at all.
You can't say keep swimming. No keep swimming. And there's a couple of them you said a couple times now. We're going to start holding you to this, all right?
Okay. It's difficult to remember what I've done as well because I tend to ramble and then touch on other shit all the time.
You make it up as you go. I know. I know.
Okay. Simple one. May have touched on it before.
I'm sure you did.
Probably. I'm going to say don't forget to stop and smell the roses.
Okay. No, maybe you haven't said that. I like that.
So, a lot of this stuff is stuff that I try and do myself. It's stuff that I try and do with my own, sort of mental health management, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's important to just, even if it's only 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just to stop what you're doing, sit and either appreciate where you are. It doesn't matter how shit life gets, there's always some positives to be had to it. And at the end of the day, if you do just keep on swimming, you'll get through it. No. But, it's just stop, appreciate the little things in life, the things that money doesn't buy, the things that, you get from nature or you just get from enjoying your surroundings. And
we're your people,
Yeah, the people around you, all those sort of aspects. Just take 5-10 minutes to appreciate that and appreciate them. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but the other thing I found with that is literally just taking 5 or 10 minutes, sitting quietly, and just trying to lose the day. Lose the stress, lose work, lose whatever's doing your head in.
You're talking about mindfulness, like just being present.
Yeah, to a degree, but I wasn't going to go that far. It's just a case of just literally sitting, letting things go for 5 to 10 minutes. The overall impact on stress management that you're going to get from that's going to be huge. It's much more impacting than you realize. Just taking 5-10 minutes of nothing.
Well, you've said that before, right? When you've done meditation and stuff, that you were like, you can tell a difference in your day-to-day life. And dude, I noticed you told me that one day. You're like, oh, I've been meditating for about a month now. And I was like, oh, honestly, I could totally tell, because you were like a lot more plugged in with the show and stuff like that. And not to, it's like we all have our downfalls. I can tell when you're stressed because you got like other things, running in the background. You're like, oh, I know I got to get to these reports. And this guy's texted me. Like I can tell, and like we all can. And I do this. The reason I can recognize it in you is because I do the same freaking thing,
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying much more now to segmentalize things. So, like, when I'm doing the show, I don't have the WhatsApp on my other monitor anymore.
Yeah, I try to turn it off, too, for that reason.
So I don't see anything there. And it's like, I get up in the morning, and I'll get up at 5, come into the office at 5, and I start doing reports.
Yeah.
I don't answer client questions. I just do reports. And then when I finish my report segment, I'll then go on to clients. Whereas previously I'd jump because something would pop up and I'd answer it. I don't do that now. It means the clients may have to wait an hour or two, but it's not the end of the world. And it means then that when I'm dealing with them, I'm focused on them. And when I'm dealing with reports, I'm focused on that, rather than bouncing from one to the other and really not being fully focused on either.
I got to get better at that, because it's something I've been thinking about, because I get caught in doing the same thing, editing at a podcast and answering people's questions, and then also working on a check-in at the same time. It's like, you know what? Why don't I just do all my check-ins at once, edit the podcast at once, answer the questions? And when I do that, I am a lot more focused.
Yeah, I mean, I do it based around time. So 5 a.m. till 7 a.m. is reports. Then I go do my cardio. Then I have my breakfast. Then I come back and I start on clients. If I've not got a lot of reports, then I'll start my clients as soon as I finish reports. But still, latest 7:30, I go and do my cardio. That's the general setup. And then I'll go back and I'll do clients and nothing but clients until they're done. Or I've geeked what I call first pass, where I've spoke to them at least once and we've got various things. I make a list of all the amendments I've got to do. And then I just go through the list and chuck off the amendments. And then I go back to my list for what I've got to do for jobs for that day and work through them. The other thing as well is what I'm very bad for, and I'm going off on a tangent here, is social media. Now, obviously, I get a lot of messages through social media, as you do. And it's very easy to just watch a reel for 2 minutes. Then that reel becomes 5 and then 10. And then before you know it, you've done 20 minutes of reels.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could have been so much more productive in that time. And then when I do finish, I've got a longer space of quality time that I can dedicate to doing something I want to do, spending time with my missus, the kids, well, maybe not the kids, I hate them fuckers, but spending quality time with the missus, rather than it be a half time because I've wasted an hour throughout the day on looking at reels, which could have been put to. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create segments of quality work, quality time.
Yeah.
So that it's I'm much more engaged in that time, which means if it's with people, they get me rather than half of me. And you will have this, and I'm sure Victoria can state to this, that you're with her, but you're not with her because you're answering a message or you're doing this or you're doing that. Yeah. And try and break it down so that time's much more rewarding in both aspects, either being productive from a work point of view or being enjoyable from a leisure point of view.
Yeah, on Fridays, she's very insistent, like for our date days, like she's very insistent that I'm not plugged in. You know, she doesn't want me like commenting on YouTube, and like clients know not to message me unless there's a contest prep person, especially if they're competing on Saturday. Like then there's an exception, but you know, for normal people that it's not an emergency, then it's like, you know, completely hands off. And it makes a difference. She's forced me to do it, and I see the difference in doing it.
I think the other problem is you, as a coach or of someone who gets communication that way, and it'll be people with their jobs and people who have employees, you feel you have to respond.
Yeah.
When actually, you know what? That person isn't going to be shitted if they have to wait an hour.
Sure.
You know, and the other big problem as well is that when you do respond, obviously like something like WhatsApp or whatever, you've not got that notification anymore. So if you can't deal with the problem there and then,
yeah,
when you go back to it later, you've forgotten what you were supposed to be bloody doing because you've had another 30 messages since then.
Yeah. That's often why I try to get to it right away, because I'm like, well, I'll get it done and then it's done, you know?
But I've actually found I'm more efficient by focusing on segments of work.
I agree.
Rather than bouncing all over the place with that attitude of, yeah, but I do it now, then it's done. Well, yeah, it is. But it's like reporting. Once I get all set up, I've got a roll. And as long as I stay with that, I'm actually really efficient at getting them out there. Yeah. But when I start breaking off to answer this or answer that, reports start taking forever.
Yeah, it's been shown that none of us are good at multitasking as good as we think we are. We all think like, oh yeah, I can multitask, but it's been shown that like it's not a good idea. So that was some good advice, Dave. I'll go with that. It's good. You did okay. You did okay. What do you think, guys?
Thank you.
And guys, leave us questions for the next show. And if you're new here, let me encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell. We have several bodybuilding podcasts that come out each week. Plus, like I said, comment with your thoughts on all the stuff today. Comment with your Incognito cycle. We did get some other comments that I didn't get to, like, who was it? Lloyd Brown said, if you're not telling your missus about your cycle, then you've got bigger problems than you realize. He does make a really valid point with that, you know?
There is a point there. Yes, I agree completely.
Yeah. But we appreciate you guys tuning in. And, of course, you can reach out to Dave on social media. I've got his link below if you want to talk to him about coaching. Do you have Pillars coming up, Pillars of Strength?
Pillars. So Pillars is running. I'm doing it slightly different order this time. So at the moment, we're doing the PED element of it as a standalone course. So we're second week this Thursday. And then I'm adding the 2 extra sessions on the end, because the PED course is more popular.
That makes sense.
So I've added the option that people can just stay on if they want to do the other content that would make it Pillars at the end.
Okay.
So that course is running now. So if someone wanted to join, now is probably the latest you could do. Otherwise, you'd be too far behind.
Okay.
That course is going to take another 6-7 weeks, and then it'll be a couple of weeks, and then I'll look to run the next one. So you're probably talking, where are we? You're probably talking October.
That's going to be here in no time, you know, so think about signing up now. Yeah, think about signing up now for the next one, guys. And, of course, check out TrueNutrition.com. You can use our code THINK over there to get some good deals on some supplements, high-quality supplements, plus they've been our longest supporter of the programming. You can reach out to me for coaching, McNallyDiets@gmail.com. And, of course, go to supplementsource.ca for Canadians. Thank you to Strom Sports Nutrition, great health and performance supplements in the UK. And thank you to everybody from Patreon. Appreciate the hell out of you guys. And for another episode of Drugs and Stuff with Dave Crosland. We'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
You said it twice.
I know.